Welcome to KCSN Update, your daily dose of Chiefs news and updates from us here at KC Sports Network. It's Wednesday, August 24th. The Chiefs will suit up tomorrow, Thursday night, for their final preseason game before the games begin to count for real when they take the field against the Arizona Cardinals on September 11th. We know the rosters have to be set by next Tuesday, with waiver claims all happening on Wednesday. We'll have you covered there with everything at KC Sports Network. So please hit that like and subscribe button. We have plenty of content that's going to break all of that stuff down. You might want to turn those notifications on too. We're about to take this entire thing up to 11. But first, some sad news today with the passing of Chiefs legend, Pro Football Hall of Famer, and Kansas City icon Len Dawson, who was reportedly in hospice care before the family shared the news of his passing on Wednesday morning. The team put out this statement this morning with a statement from Chiefs chairman and CEO Clark Hunt, who said, "My family and I are heartbroken. Len Dawson is synonymous with the Kansas City Chiefs. Len embraced and came to embody Kansas City and the people that call it home. You'd be hard-pressed to find a player who had a bigger impact in shaping the organization as we know it today than Len Dawson did. I admired Len my entire life, first as a Hall of Fame player on the field and later as he transitioned into a successful broadcasting career. Throughout his remarkable career, Len made it a priority to give back to the community that he loved. The franchise lost a true legend, and our thoughts and prayers go out to Linda and his family." So I'd expect the Chiefs to have some sort of a tribute to Len Dawson on Thursday night, as that game against the Packers is at Arrowhead Stadium. We've been talking about this week. The first teamers and most of the coaching staff have been prepping for that game against the Arizona Cardinals on September 11th, while the backups fight for what's realistically just a handful, of final spots available. Special teams, we know, is going to be huge in that. So which 7 players are we most looking forward to watching on Thursday night that have some stake and some skin in the game as to, what's going to happen with them? We'll get to that right after this.
You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
All right, joining me to talk about the 7 guys we're excited to watch on Thursday night will be our podcast producer here at KC Sports Network, and basically our Swiss Army knife, does a little bit of everything, Tucker Franklin, who's going to help us break down whether or not a Derek Gore and Blake Bell injury are enough to keep Ronald Jones on the final 53-man roster. You guys can all think about that while I check in with our sponsor here, DraftKings. Kansas, DraftKings Sportsbook is coming to the Sunflower State. It won't be long until you can bet on all your favorite sports from the comfort of your own home. To celebrate, all new customers will receive $100 in free bets when you sign up using code KCSN. Plus, one lucky customer will win a $100,000 free bet. That's right. DraftKings Sportsbook is giving you $100 in free bets just for signing up today. No deposit required. Soon you'll be able to bet on money lines, spreads, props, and more with one of America's top-rated sportsbook apps, DraftKings Sportsbook. Plus, you'll be entered to win a $100,000 free bet when you sign up. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and sign up with code KCSN to get $100 in free bets to use once mobile sports betting hits Kansas. Plus, one lucky customer will win a $100,000 free bet. That's code KCSN only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Getting help is your best bet. Call 1-800-522-4700. Must be 21, physically present in Kansas. Eligibility restrictions apply. See terms at DraftKings.com/sportsbook. Subject to regulatory licensing requirements. One per customer. $100 issued as 4 $25 free bets. No purchase necessary for sweepstake. Void where prohibited. Ends first day DraftKings is allowed to operate in Kansas. See terms at DraftKings.com/Kansas. All right, Tucker. Now let's get into it. Now that we've paid some of the bills. Ronald Jones. I don't think when we broke down the roster, we kind of had him on the outside. I think that was the prevailing thought. And then Derek Gore has a thumb injury. And since he started practice, not on the PUP list at training camp, and now is on the injured reserve list, he is out for the year. So Derek Gore will not be playing in 2022. And then we saw the injury to Blake Bell. No, it's a different position, but it opens up a spot. He's got a hip flexor injury, which kind of has the Nebraska Furniture Mart delivery times of windows, and that it's anywhere between 1 and 6 weeks to come back based on what the internet told me. Just like, we'll deliver something between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. Sometime on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. So is that enough for Ronald Jones to make this roster? And why Are you excited or interested to see what he does on Thursday night?
I'm going to say yes. I think it is enough. I think one injury wouldn't have been enough. I don't think the Derek Gore injury would have been enough for him to make it, but I think that the injury with Blake Bell is enough for him to make it. It looks like they're going to keep 3 tight ends. And we had talked about them keeping 4 tight ends, which kind of, made it harder for them to keep 4 running backs. That opens up spotted out, but running back now. But Ronald Jones has to play well. I think that's another thing too, is that they're not going to feel like they have to keep Ronald Jones because they have to keep Ronald Jones. They'll keep somebody else somewhere else. But Ronald Jones has to look a little bit better than he has in these first 2 preseason games.
And I know it doesn't matter, but I would like to feel better about what Ronald Jones could bring. And I hope that he does play on Thursday night and comes out and plays really well, so we can go back to feeling as optimistic about him as we did when he originally signed as a free agent this offseason. We just haven't seen it. And maybe the coaching staff sees something. Maybe they're hiding. Maybe there's just stuff that we don't know, and he's going to come out and play well. This guy's played in the league before. He's had success in the league, but we just haven't seen it. I would like to see it on Thursday night just to feel a little bit better and get back to that optimism that we had when he was first signed. But let's stay on the offense. Another guy, the second guy that I'm excited to watch is tight end Noah Gray. For the same reason that we just talked about with Ronald Jones with the numbers game, Noah Gray was already probably going to make this team. And so with Blake Bell's hip flexor injury, we know Jody Fortson, Travis Kelce are going to be 2 guys. What kind of impact could Noah Gray make? We've seen him step up and make some plays. But again, with that injury, everybody slides up a little bit, and maybe now we see a little bit more Noah Gray. Maybe he gets some offensive snaps and some certain packages that they put together for him early in the season before Blake Bell comes back from that, again, 1 to 6 weeks based on what Google told me of coming back from a hip flexor surgery.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's really interesting about Noah Gray is when you start to look at him, Travis Kelce, and Joe Fortson, they all kind of have the same play style, right? None of them are inline tight ends. Blake Bell was that blocking tight end that they have. So maybe Noah Gray tries to become more of that, and he can find himself in more of a role there. I know a lot of the question last year was his offensive production on that side of the ball. Kind of unfair to put an offensive production tag on him with Travis Kelce ahead of him, and even really Blake Bell ahead of him too, because Blake Bell's getting those QB sneaks. He's getting those screen passes and everything like that. But I'm excited to see what he can do kind of in this tight end, probably tight end 2 role. We'll see him a lot with Travis Kelce out there. And his special teams ability too is one of those things. Dave Tobe really likes him. If you look at this, at the special teams for this team, he's on almost every special teams. So he's going to be on this roster, obviously, but I think that's just another wrinkle that it adds is he is a very special teams versatile player, and it's going to be I don't expect a whole lot offensive production wise from him, because I think he might have to take in more of that inline tight end role.
Yeah. Great points. We're going to have one more player on the offensive side before we move to the defense, but before we get to this offensive tackle that we're excited to watch, or that I'm interested to watch, make sure you like and subscribe and you're supporting what we're doing here. If you like the content, let us know in the comment section. If you disagree, if there's a player that you're really excited to watch on Thursday night that we have not yet talked about, but whether you're listening to the podcast audio, please leave a review. If you feel so inclined, if you like what we've got going on, again, not just with this show or this episode, but what we've got going on with the entire network. It does help the algorithm, the reach, and the way that other people see it. That stuff is important. And so we appreciate your support by liking and subscribing to this content and following us on your podcast platforms. All right, Tucker, next, the final offensive player that I'm excited or interested to watch on Thursday night. And it's a group that if you've been listening to us or watching these videos on KCSN Update, we've been talking about the backup offensive line situation, and specifically the offensive tackles, and looking for a guy to really step up and feel good about. We haven't seen a lot of push, haven't seen a lot of great play consistently from the backup offensive line and those tackles. And one of the players that could step up on Thursday night and really help his case to make the roster and for people to feel good about, the backup tackle situation going into the season is Prince Tega-Wanogho. Again, Tucker, player that we've talked about, and, one of those guys you talk about tackle, Lucas Niang, hasn't practiced yet, started on PUP. So he's going to miss at least the first 4 weeks of the season. But even with him potentially coming back in a few weeks, it wasn't like he's really earned the right to be just handed that ability, that responsibility to be like, well, Lucas Niang's coming back, he'll be the guy. He hasn't played, and he's definitely an intriguing option. Top draft pick, banged up, had a bad injury last year. So definitely somebody that you wanted to see and could have an option, but not somebody they're just going to count on and write down in pen. And so what do you want to see from Prince Tega on Thursday night?
I think the biggest thing for Prince is to be healthy. He's a good athlete. He's got good fluid movements. He's good he looks good in his sets. He just hasn't been healthy, and I think that's kind of been the biggest limiting factor in his career is his health. And I want to see him go out and do what he does. He was good out of Auburn. I really liked him out of Auburn, and seeing I want to see him kind of improve off with the health. I think he can kind of help his abilities there and be that swing tackle for the Chiefs.
Yeah, and have talked about him before, but Jaron Christian, Roderick Johnson, some of these other guys, and we know that if it's the first team, and so if a tackle gets hurt, chances that Joe Thuney steps out if it's Orlando Brown and plays left tackle is very high. But as it stands now, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some sort of key injury that there wasn't. And I don't have the guys all off the top of my head right now, but there are going to be veterans out there. Seen Jason Peters' name get thrown out. There are some veteran offensive tackles out there who are available and not on rosters right now, who might be better options than what we've seen in the limited snaps that we've seen. Now, these coaches have seen thousands of snaps from these guys at practice. They'd have a much better idea of who they feel comfortable with running out there and performing at a level that would keep this offense playing as efficient and as explosive as we expect them to play. But again, that backup offensive line, specifically those tackles, has been an issue so far in the preseason for the Chiefs, and something that you want to feel better about going into the season. And Prince Tega come out and playing well could really go a long ways, not just for him, but for those of us that are really paying attention to those backup spots to feel good about the situation that they're in. All right, Tucker, let's move to the other side of the ball. A player that I'm really excited about, and I know Pro Football Focus's Mike Renner put out this video of Chiefs rookie linebacker Leo Chenal from his last performance, and just beasting on dudes. They need to put a disclaimer when you put a video like that out there. For anybody with a heart condition and an affinity for physical football, like, don't watch that video without a doctor's permission or something, because that is exactly what I was excited about when they drafted him. When you watch his highlights at Wisconsin, you get that kind of physical presence, that kind of athlete, that kind of guy that has got some vision, knows where ball carrier, finds his way to the ball carrier pretty easily. I'm excited to see he's making this team. So it's not the context with him and being excited to watch him isn't about that, but a couple injuries, this guy is going to, get a lot of playing time on the field, and I'm excited for it. And this is the kind of game that's going to be really valuable for a player like Leo Chenal, who isn't necessarily probably projected as a starter. He'll have packages that are set up for him, but a couple injuries and he's going to play a lot of snaps. So Thursday night will be big for him.
What I think is really most interesting about this Thursday night game with Leo Chenal is he could have the opportunity to play a little bit more Mike linebacker, get that green dot, get the opportunity to call some plays on that defensive side of the ball. I think that's going to be really good for him. Really exciting to see how he does. And when he played that role against the Bears, he played really well in that role. He's a downhill guy, a guy who likes to hit. He's an old school Dick Butkus style, I think, linebacker when you start to talk about him. So seeing him in that role is going to be fun. Listed, as you mentioned, BJ, behind Elijah Lee, kind of in that depth chart there. How much is Elijah Lee really going to get on the field? We don't know with the formations that the Chiefs like to run out of there on defense. But I'm excited to see what he can do in that Mike linebacker position, as he looks to be kind of like a jack of all trades backup on that linebacker room.
You'd say he's the Swiss Army knife of the Chiefs defense, just like the Swiss Army knife of KC Sports Network, Tucker. All right, let's go on to the defensive backs, three of the guys, and we're just kind of lumping these three guys together because a lot of the conversation that I know the guys in the lab have had, we've had it on our roster projections and trying to figure out the 53-man roster. These three names, as far as defensive backs go in the numbers game, kind of get looped in together, and that's Chris Lammons, Jaylen Watson, the rookie, and then Dicaprio Bootle. Expect probably a couple of those, at least two of those guys to make this roster based on what we've seen, but expect all three of those guys to play a lot on Thursday night and for a lot of eyes to be on them, particularly from Chiefs assistant head coach and special teams coordinator Dave Toub. We talk about these last 3-4 roster spots. That's going to be a huge part of this. We've seen that with Lammons and Bootle in the past, and now Jaylen Watson playing solid defense. He's a rookie draft pick, might not have the equity that a couple of those other guys through Dave Toub or for Dave Toub yet, but a player that comes out and plays well on Thursday, and we've seen him flash some ability. It'd be interesting to see how those guys, kind of make their final cases here on Thursday, Tuck.
Yeah, I think it is going to come down to the special teams ability. Steve Spagnuolo had a really interesting quote earlier this week when he was asked kind of about Rashad Fenton. If Rashad Fenton goes out, who's going to come in?
Yep.
He said both Williams and Watson. He brought up Watson himself, so that kind of makes me think that he's going to make the roster, especially with the special teams things that he has shown. I think that Dave Tobe will be okay with that, but Dave Tobe really does love him some Chris Lammons. So that's one of those things when you're watching, you're thinking, okay, how is he going to fit into this roster? How is he going to fit into this defense? He didn't play particularly well on the last preseason game against the Commanders, but I think that the Watson, I'm a big fan of him. I'm a big fan of what he's been able to do, been able to show. So I think Kent Swanson compared him to Charvarius Ward. I know he's wearing 35, but with the length and everything, I think he said he looks a lot like Charvarius Ward, and I think that's good company to be mentioned in.
Yeah, no, that absolutely is. And we've seen development from those guys. And at some point, you got to trust your young guys to come out and play. And Jaylen Watson is going to be one of those dudes. And I know Matty Lane has been really excited. He's one of his guys. And Matty Lane's been really excited to see what we've seen from Jaylen Watson. So far in the preseason, he's a guy that can go out and play. I mean, it's a lot of backups on Thursday night. But again, these guys are going to go out and show out. And it's an interesting time. And we talked about, on Outside the Trenches earlier, we talked with Nick Leckie about, kind of the different mindsets for players going into this game, where some players are, like a Leo Chenal is trying to really take advantage of these snaps to be prepared for when he does get called upon, because he's going to be out on the field for the Chiefs, where other guys are fighting for roster spots and know that they've got a chance to make it. Some guys are trying to prove that they can be good teammates and they can do all the right things to try to get a practice squad spot and then show some ability that, might lend them to being called up on game day. And some guys are fighting for roster spots on other teams. There are a lot of guys, as your team's very good, the Chiefs are very deep. There's a lot of guys that will not make this roster that will be on other NFL teams, by next Wednesday when waiver claims go through. So that's always interesting. And I always appreciate the guys that, are going out there and playing, for some of them, it's going to be the last time they ever put on a professional uniform. And I've always respected that. I loved that when I was with the team, and I loved seeing one of my favorite things for watching the game on Thursday night. One of my favorite things to watch are the first team players. They'll be in their sweats or, whatever their sideline gear. They're not playing this game, but seeing how excited they get for the young guys that they grinded their ass off with up at training camp, which is not fun. Those guys really do come together, and it's cool to see them support one another when they do that.
Absolutely. And I think that that's kind of the cool thing to reflect on as me going to a Division II college. There's a lot of Division II players that I know that I've had relationships with that this is it for them. Like this is sometimes the last time they're going to play in the league, and just to see that special kind of moment for them. Josh Caldwell is a guy that comes to mind who was at Northwest Missouri State. He got to score a touchdown for the Chiefs. He's from Kansas City, from the Kansas City area, and Andy Reid gave him that opportunity to score a touchdown in a preseason game. That's something he's always going to have. So I think that that's something too that's really almost sentimental about these games when you start looking at it from that perspective. And Nick brought up a really good point on Outside the Trenches. You should go listen to that show where he said that he hates this time because it brings up bad memories for that, because he was a bubble guy. So there's a lot of different perspectives, and I think we cover a lot of good perspectives here on KC Sports Network. That's the draw. That's what you should like. That's what you should.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And like I said, it's easy for us to see the big picture and appreciate guys suiting up for the last time. Yeah. Guys aren't really thinking about that. They don't think it's their last time. They don't want it to be their last time. They're competitive. They're working their ass off their entire lives for this position. So it's something to respect. And we appreciate that. And we'll have the game covered. We'll be doing our post-game show from the Kingdom Bar and Grill out in Overland Park, Kansas. So if you want to catch the game and you don't have a spot to do it, if you're not going out to Arrowhead, come hang with us at the Kingdom Bar. We will be there a couple hours before the game setting up, and then we'll be going live right after the game to break it all down. And then just like we will for all of the games during the regular season and hopefully long into the postseason as well. But we appreciate you for tuning into this episode of KCSN Update, and we will see you next time.